if I just make a start now, because I am conscious of time and hopefully other people will join us as we go through. Many of you have probably joined us before in these fortnightly and monthly webinars that we have put together as part of our communities of practice, as part of our Centre for Excellence, where we're really focusing on people and how you can upskill and support your staff and also your students within your organisations. I'm not going to waste lots of time talking about what our Centre for Excellence is, because I know many of you are really familiar with that. And I'll move on to introducing you to Ashley, who's joined us this afternoon. But just before I do that, I just wanted to give a little bit of a context around why we felt that it was important to share some of our experiences and challenges around supporting young people in our college environment with Tourette syndrome. This is Archie, who's a student at our college, and you can see that he has many barriers to learning, and he has Tourette syndrome, he has OCDs, chronic fatigue, and he's had a really difficult challenging schooling actually, and he actually spent much of his time being homeschooled, and I think he left school in year 7. Ashley had a long transition period into our college, and in his second year we made a few mistakes to his program and to the level of support that he was receiving, and quickly that came to the forefront, and we needed to look at how we could work with the teams and the staff, the new team that we're now working with Archie, to ensure that he was empowered and people really understood his individual needs. So we were in contact with his parents, and they suggested Ashley, who is Archie's mentor, and he'll tell you a little bit more about that. And we really wanted to understand how the Tourette's and his other learning barriers impacted on him. So we felt the best person to train the staff was Archie himself. That was very intimidating, not intimidating, but it was very worrying for Archie to stand in front of a group of professionals and tell them all about his learning barriers and how his Tourette's impacted on him. So from, like I said, talking to the parents, we were put in touch with Ashley, who doesn't live near the college. She lives in Oxford actually, and these were the days before the pandemic. So Ashley came to the college with Archie, and they delivered a session all about Tourette's to the staff at the college, and it was such a great experience for us to really understand Archie and have the support of Ashley in explaining that to all the staff. Archie then went on to deliver a similar session to his peers, so that straight away everybody understood what Archie was experiencing on a day-to-day basis in the classroom, and how his Tourette's and those other learning barriers really impacted on him, and how we then co-created his program of study. And you can see some of the things that we've done there. So I think that we wanted to, people have been talking to us a lot about autism and learners with a range of barriers, and I think we felt that to share some of our practice around Tourette's and to give you some more knowledge about Tourette's and how it impacts on young people, we thought that it would be useful to bring Ashley along this afternoon to share that with you. So Archie is now doing really well at the college. He is found the lockdown really difficult, but has been attending college for some times during his program, and he's excelling in his photography program and receiving distinctions. So we've got it right now, and we just wanted to give you this training like we've given to our staff, so that hopefully that, you know, if you're preparing for learners that are coming to your programs for next year that have Tourette's, then you have a little bit more information about how you can adapt their programs so that they are so successful. So I'll hand over to you, Ash, to kind of give an overview of what you're going to cover this afternoon. and over to you.
Hi everybody, I'm Ash. I'm now 52. Like Archie, I had Tourette's and severe OCD, which I didn't get diagnosed till I was 35. I've now fully recovered. A lot of my work now is involved with research in Tourette's. Also, I've recovered from my Tourette's, but also giving knowledge back so people like Archie can go on and lead a good life in education. What do we know about Tourette syndrome? We'll cover what your perception of Tourette's is from the media. How have you ever worked with anyone with Tourette's or tics? And what symptoms did they show? I think we can go on to the next slide now, Sam, which is number 5. Tourette's is often misunderstood as a condition which makes people swear or say social inappropriate things. Although it is true that coprolalia, the clinical term for voluntary swearing, is a symptom of TS, it only affects a minority of people, between 15 and 20%. This kind of started when John, who's now got an MBE, he was one of the first guys ever to do media work about Tourette's in the 80s. It's obviously portrayed as people swearing. There's only, like he says, a tiny percent, a small percent do actually have the swearing, where Tourette's can manifest in many other ways, which we'll cover. But what we mustn't do in that aspect is deny the people that do swear that they are still suffering with Tourette's, as someone who's got the other types of tics as well. So yeah, this misconception that it's all about swearing is totally incorrect. It's a picture of the 2 young people who did a video, which you can catch up on once it's down. Tourette syndrome is a genetically determined neurological condition. There's no one single genetic that proves that someone has Tourette's in one single gene, but there's a genetic predisposition of people that have Tourette's, usually from a parent. So myself, I have Tourette's, but one of my children's got mild symptoms. So, but studies showed that identical twins, they have 70% likelihood to have Tourette's together, where identical twins don't. Tics usually start around the age of 6 to 7 and tend to peak early around adolescence, which is around about Archie's age. This can vary, it can come on at later in life, it's all different variation. It affects 1 person in every 100, as common as autism, and is more common amongst boys. So 75% of people with Tourette's are more likely to be male, and the 25% would be a female. Again, it's the same, all the symptoms are the same, differential symptoms, but it is Tourette's, despite the difference in percentages. It can range from mild to severe symptoms. Individuals may move across the spectrum over time or response to environmental factors. So someone's Tourette's like mine used to wane for a while, and then a stressful event would come on, or anything that's exertional, as in education, exams coming up, example, that would then increase the likelihood of more tics prevailing. Also, times of the year, sometimes in the winter months, but people have seasonal adjustment disorders. That's an environmental factor. A divorce, people's, any factors that outside of their control could cause an increase in the tics themselves. Back one. One more forward, I think. Sam, that's it. TS can initially be triggered by emotional events, which could be caused during research. Oh, sorry, we're back. Yeah, go back one. Sorry, Sam. It's the.
I'm so sorry. My mouse seems to have a mind of its own.
No worries.
I'll try not to touch the computer, and I'll just stay on this slide for a minute.
Yeah, that's fine. TS can initially be triggered by emotional events, which could be caused by low birth weight in a child. Sometimes mums smoking during pregnancy, alcohol during pregnancy. Although it's not confirmed, the research is still ongoing. Emotional events could also be a traumatic event. Witnessing things can happen, can cause Tourette's to start. Tics are involuntary sounds of movement, and they have to be present for at least 12 months for a diagnosis of Tourette's to be confirmed. Changeable, obviously. They can be coprolalia 1 minute, they could be differently. Motor tics of moving the head, blinking eyes, hurting oneself unintentionally. What also is we don't see motor tics. A lot of people don't realise is a tic. They get visual tics, so they'll see shadows or their eyes will move without actually control. Intrusive thoughts, which we'll cover with OCD, but also with Tourette's, you can have heinous intrusive thoughts, fears, thoughts of harming, thoughts, images of blood, images of sexually inappropriate things. They can cause a lot of problems, and they're not unwanted. They're involuntary. They can pop up at any time. Conversational tics can come in. You may be having a normal conversation with someone, and a word will come out unintentionally, and that word can then end up being repeated. Again, it's increased by stress, anxiety, excitement, hunger, tiredness, and sensory changes. So stress event could be anything of being late for school, can then cause stress levels to go up, which then causes an increase in the tics. The tics then makes the person anxious. The anxiety then increases their tics again. Excitement could be something simple like they're looking forward to doing something after school or doing something during school. That could cause the tic. Excuse me. Hunger, dietary is very important in Tourette's, eating frequent and often, so sugar levels don't drop all of a sudden. That can then cause increase in tics. Tiredness, obviously, someone with Tourette's will get tired because they holding in the urge for the tics come out, causing severe tiredness. So it's about balancing and also good sleep pattern, sensory changes with hot and cold weathers. A lot of people in the summer say Tourette's is worse in the summer because of heat. What can help with Tourette's is decreased by exercise. Where you're doing something different, you're not actually focusing on the Tourette's, and you will realise that sometimes the tics are no longer there. Distraction, again, we've learned that people that play the drums as an exercise, using left hand, right hand coordination can help, and obviously deep concentration. Someone might have a real fascination with a certain subject, so once they're inside that zone, that you'll find that the tics and the urges or the feelings of a tic coming up are depressed. 50% of cases, tics can lessen by adulthood, which is a prime example of myself. By the time I got to 40, my tics had become less prevalent and less bothersome. Also, what helped with that was the awareness and psychoeducation of how Tourette's manifests itself. So having the diagnosis in place helped me hugely for myself personally, so I understood what was happening to me. Next slide. Not going.
Can you not see that next slide? Do you want that?
It's coming up as number 9.
Okay, go again.
Oh yeah,
there we go.
There you go. Yeah, thank you. Here's some examples of common motor and vocal tics. So simple motor tic could be eye blinking, which means your eyes are blinking, which means they're uncontrolling. Eye rolling, so the eyes will roll backwards and forwards. Pulling faces, grimacing, shoulder shrugging, limb and head jerking, nodding, and abdominal tensing. So you could be tensing your muscles up in your stomach and you're not controlling that. Vocal tics, whistling, throat clearing, sniffing, coughing, tongue clicking, typical one, grunting, animal sounds, which was one of my favourites and still can be. Complex means they're intertwined, can be with motor tics as well, jumping, twirling, touching objects and other people, which means they may come up and put the hand on your shoulder or put the hand on your head, which is a normal tic and nothing to be afraid of. Obscene movements or gestures. Copropraxia, that's called. So it's not coprolalia, which is words. These are movements or gestures. Repeating other people's gestures, exproxia, and non-seen, socially inappropriate behaviour, remarking about a person's weight or inappropriately touching someone. Involuntary swearing, coprolalia again, and repeating the sound of word or phrase. Also, you find with echolalia, some people can mimic someone's voice or copy their voice tone or their accent or be the way the actual talking of the voice. That's that covered, Sam. Ooh. There's the hidden tics. This is interesting parts. There's visual tics, looking at shadows and counting objects. So you will automatically turn to look, and it's a tic. Intrusive thoughts harming someone or themselves, which is unwanted intrusive thoughts. Difference with these type of intrusive thoughts compared to OCD, the intrusive thoughts are scary, but the person who's having them doesn't have any compulsive behaviours to try and rid themselves of them, which can then overlap with OCD. So that's where a good psychologist would divert between what are intrusive thoughts in Tourette's and what are intrusive thoughts in OCD. Suggestive tics overwhelm an urge to follow through inappropriate suggestions. So someone might say to someone, do X, Y, Z, and then what could happen? That could trigger that person. Something we can all think, but kids with TS can't regulate. It's TS. It can be a bit like having a window in their soul, which is very true. You have these thoughts and there's no control. Conversational, contextual, these can sound and appear to be in the correct context, but they find it very hard to switch off their regulator button. So you will start talking and then the tics will start coming out and then there's no button there to stop. So the continuation of the tic comes out through conversation. Co-occurring conditions, this is important because obviously most people associate Tourette's and someone have Tourette's on its own, and it's very, very rare for someone to have Tourette's on its own. As it says here, 85% of people with TS will also experience co-occurring conditions such as ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, autism spectrum disorder, anxiety, sensory processing disorder, difficulty processing. And for many of the co-occurrences, it can be more challenging than the tics themselves, which is very true because what you found if someone who's got quite bad OCD will make the Tourette's much worse. Treating the OCD can make the Tourette's less problematic. This is the famous iceberg. So there is much more to Tourette syndrome than you see on the surface. So we have the vocal tics, motor tics, all intertwined, which can cause rage, behavioural issues, conduct issues, anxiety, autistic spectrum disorder, which runs alongside. Obviously, unfortunately, people with Tourette's do end up being bullied. Sleep issues can be because of Tourette's with the tics, or it could actually be separate to the Tourette's itself. ADHD, social skills and social functioning. So a lot of people have difficulty making friends or peers. Obviously, psychoeducation can help with that. Obsessive compulsive behaviour, which is doing behaviours which is not OCD, and obviously the obsessive compulsive disorder, which is it's a severe mental disorder which causes people huge debilitation alongside living with Tourette's on itself. Why might getting a diagnosis be important? I think diagnosis is hugely beneficial because we can have the correct information for the school, for the parents, for the person themselves. Don't like the term label. Labels are for jars, diagnosis are for people. School college support is really helpful. So if you know someone's got ADHD or they're autistic, like Archie as an example, we can incorporate what works best for the child. That then allows better understanding and reasonable adjustments, obviously with the EHCP, and obviously accessing the correct treatment. No good treating something if it's not what you've got wrong with you. Get a diagnosis helpful. Sometimes it'll be helpful for the school I'm involved to keep a diary, contact Tourette's Action, the national charity, GP referral, and obviously you will then get an appointment with a specialist who will give you the help and the diagnosis you may need. After diagnosis, obviously access to local support groups, befrienders, helpful to have people there as buddies, as we call them, support to community mental health trust, children and adolescents. Obviously there's long waiting lists, but obviously if your access to them is good, even better. Grants, possible statutory support. There's your discount cards, because obviously Tourette's is classed as a disability. Obviously the parents would need support. Some parents grieve because of what's happening to the child, so they would need support. And the most importantly, psychoeducation for the children, family and school. That's one of the key factors. I think if everyone's aware and families and children are prepared to educate the whole school, then that makes their life much more better. Understanding is the key. And as we say, laugh with us, not at us.
There's just a question that's come in, Ash, around if a college is thinking that they're seeing some of these behaviours in a young person, what should they do first to you said about the importance of a diagnosis so that they're able to access the support. So as a college, what would you suggest that they should do in the first instance? Obviously,
I suppose obviously the parents would be aware, wouldn't they, at the time, unless of course, which is not, could happen, is that Tourette's is only happening within the education, not so much at home. Normally it's the other way around because the child will suppress the tics. But I would start making documentations and concerns, and then pass it on to the parents and collaborate as a group together if it's impeding on the child's education and their well-being. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's like anything that's a concern. It should be no different to, it's got to be raised, doesn't it, and flagged.
I think that what you said about making a diary and like reporting it down about some of and helping the parents to make that referral, and it, like you said, it may be that like you talked about the co-occurring themes a minute ago, and it may be that the parents are very aware of the autism, but actually there may be some other things within that may be being demonstrated within a college environment or a school environment that they're not seeing at home. So I think your advice of writing it all down and having those diaries and those conversations with parents is important.
Exactly. And I think there was a little slide we missed out where there is tic disorders that don't fall into the Tourette syndrome diagnosis. So you can have tic disorders outside of Tourette's, but to fit that criteria of Tourette syndrome, there's a certain criteria you fit into. Lasting longer than 12 months. When did it start? Looking at them different things, how the tics first start. Because obviously you can have tic behaviours outside of Tourette's as well.
Thank you.
Obviously, Tourette syndrome is not a mental health condition, but it can certainly have an effect on a child's mental health, which is blatantly obvious, because obviously you're going to feel quite unique and withdrawn, unusually anxious, feel totally different to other people. Therefore, you will end up having a low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, feeling very, very low in oneself. As we said, depression, suicidal thoughts, not unheard of, suicidal ideation with Tourette's not because of the Tourette's, but because of the depression, and then that leads on to further, low mood. Hormones, bullying, and change is there, isn't it? So you're going through that change of being a teenager into the adolescent stages. Hormone levels are changing. Obviously, there could be bullying in the school place or further education, and also change. Sudden change from jumping from 1 year, like we are now, going back into. People are coming back into college again, so some of the Tourette's might find that quite hard to do. So that then increase and have impact on their mental health.
There's another question that's come through from Paula to say that how would this be supported in adults? She's saying that there's very little, I find there is very little support for adults with an additional learning need. I hope that that's what Paula means. But, about adults, I mean, you mentioned about the Tourette's Action.
Yeah.
Is there anything
they cover adults as well. That whole, as you say, if someone over 18, you're then going into adult mental health systems, aren't you? So, but there is a lack of support out there, unfortunately. Certainly, are we going to the postcode lottery system again, aren't we, where people trying to access help aren't getting the help that they need? Huge amount of stigma still surrounds TS, often limiting confidence and self-esteem with those diagnosed, especially young people. So yeah, it's still some certain stigma out there still about Tourette's. I still get people say to me, it must be well cool to have Tourette's. It's not, but that's the way people perceive it. So we're still working on educating the public and the impact it can have on a human being, as we're discussing today. If we don't understand it, then learn about it. And obviously it says there, encourage a young person, if they feel able to, just talk about their Tourette's. It's important that they can understand what's going on for themselves. And if it's possible, encourage them to share with their friends. The friends and their peers understand, which Archie's been doing now, understand what they're going through as a human being. And I think probably today's age with Archie, the younger ages, they're more understanding now, more empathetic than compared to 20 years ago, one would hope.
I think that a lot of the students, when they come from the secondary schools and into college environments, they're suddenly within a completely different peer group of different schools that have all, they're studying on people that they've never been to school with before. And obviously, because they're focusing on a different vocational element, that they, in school, there's that curriculum of GCSEs, but now we're looking at a vocational pathway, whether it be A levels or health and social care or media. So I think it is then when young people are then, their peers that they've grown up with are very aware of it. And but for some people, they've never met somebody with Tourette's before, and they do find it funny, because they don't know how to respond, so they do laugh. And as we know, that having that laughing can then create, the bullying like we talked about, but it can lead to that. But there are young people's responses to hearing somebody using inappropriate language as they're walking past the head of faculty that's walking down the corridor. It's those things that, and I think for us as a college, where we were able to provide that information to the peers and the tutors, and it wasn't just the people that were teaching Archie, it's about the receptionists, it's about the caretaking staff, it's about everybody, so that they're really aware. And as Archie, he became more confident himself, with lessened his tics, because he knew that everybody was really aware of it, and he didn't need to have to explain all the time. And because everybody just became, everybody was aware that we've all got individual needs, and this is Archie.
Yeah, and I think with psychoeducation, like you say, for everybody, people just sort of like, it's just Archie being Archie, or me being me, or any child with Tourette's being that person. And then what you find is with the education, they tend not to react as much over time, so therefore that's beneficial for all parties. Like with people not reacting to it, there's less likely the person's going to be stressed, less likely their Tourette's is going to be worse.
There's another question that's come through around the suicidal ideation, and also the suicidal thoughts, or a thought that a tic or a byproduct caused by depression. And if it is thought that it's a tic, is there a way we can support a learner? And I think you've probably just covered that then, Ash, around the fact that it's the reactions as well, by the education and the understanding, it can lessen the tics.
Absolutely. We educate people about epilepsy in college, asthma, don't we? All different things. So let's educate people about Tourette's in these educational places and make their life more bearable, which then probably leads down to less of a mental health problem, less likely to go on to commit suicide. That's factuality, isn't it? Making their life easier and accommodating. Yeah, the negative cycle. Someone with tics feels that they have a lack of control, and then they will end up feeling isolated, which is then part of that mental health spectrum. And obviously poor self-esteem. They feel low about themselves because they obviously are, or feel different to others. And then they get challenging behaviours where they might get anger, rage, and then which leads on to anxiety, then equals more tics. So it's a vicious circle. It's what we call the vicious flower in Tourette's, how it can work. And now we can break down those circles, and less likely the tics will become less problematic. Yeah, give them a little bit of control. Isolation comes back, remove some of them things. Less likely Tourette's going to be as severe as it is in that vicious loop. As we say there, typical behaviour, bad behaviour alongside TS can be a sign the child tried to regain some control and distract them from their tics. Yeah, so someone might become angry and doing that as a distraction rather than actually being angry at the rest of the world. So sometimes someone can have a outburst of rage as a distraction rather than actually because they're angry. That's quite common in Tourette's, with some Tourette sufferers that they will act in that way. Tics can sometimes be in context. You may need to ask the child, this actually the tic may come out, and then you can communicate with the child, work with them and listen to your instincts, as it says below in the whole school approach. Again, if you're unsure, then assume it's a tic, and I think that's about spot on. Then the communication with the child: what happened? Why did you think that happened? How can we help next time? how we can work differently. It may not be, they might need help for next time, but at least they're communicating and passing on how they were feeling, why it happened to them, and exactly get to know the child rather than challenging them and questioning them. Just communication skills for the person with Tourette's. Absolutely. Yeah. Although tics are involuntary, many people are able to suppress them. So you feel a urge before they come. This is why you may see less at school. So what happens is the child can actually hold in the tics until they go back home to their environment. And this home is a safe place with no judgment. That's where the tics will all be released. And very exhausting for people to hold in tics during the day. So you have this. Some people don't have the predominancy urge. Sometimes their tics come out straight away. There's no sensations. They're bang, they're out. A helpful way of understanding this is to compare it to a blink, cough, yawn, sneeze, scratch for a short period of time. It's possible to keep your eyes wide open and avoid blinking, but eventually you will have to blink. So that's a prime example of what it's like to have Tourette's. If you keep your eyes open as long as you can, at some point you will have to blink because the urge is too strong to control. That is a really, really good way of explaining Tourette's to people. Unless the predominantary urge, the feeling that some people get before a tic is released, so you'll get a sensation in the muscle, you might get dry throat, but you know that a tic is going to happen because of that predominantry urge. Next one, Sam.
Yeah, we've just had
just see that question pop up. Yeah, sorry.
Questions. Yeah. Do you think that the teenage singing superstar Billie Eilish is helping to raise the profile of Tourette syndrome? Is the pressure of the environment she finds herself in the best setting for her condition?
I think she's done a great job of raising awareness, isn't she? Although she's in the public eye, but at least she's been able to talk openly about it. So it's a great awareness way, someone who is famous to be able to release and talk about their Tourette's. I think another guy was Tim, the guy who's playing football for America and Everton. It was Tim Howard. He was a severe Tourette sufferer, but during his football time, when playing football, he very rarely had a tic because his concentration levels were high. So yeah, I think it's good that Billie Eilish has spoken out about Tourette's.
And the other question,
sorry,
the other question before that, sorry, Ash, was around if there isn't much support. Back to the conversation we had earlier about if there isn't very much support for young people in the education institution that they're in, then where do people go to look for help in gaining skills to support people with Tourette's?
I think obviously Tourette's Action would be a brilliant resource to go to because they can offer so many things and help just for that child alone or the person who's got Tourette's. So, and also you've got the support groups, you've got the peer support groups. But the trouble is, if the help's not at the college, how can we make that child's life better? It's a balancing thing. But with Tourette's Action, they have got some great help and resources there for people with Tourette's. Oh, this one's brilliant. You can take a measure of concentration to resist the urge to tic, but with practicing therapeutic intervention, a certain level of control can be applied by most. So what we're looking at is behavioural changes to do habit reversal. So when we feel an urge to tic come, we're going to do something else, like put a hand on our leg. We're changing the way we're doing the things that the tic. So we know a tic's coming. We can do something different about that. Some people will be able to suppress tics more easily than others, and some just may not want to as they find it too uncomfortable. It takes a lot of energy to suppress, so you're keeping it in as long as you can. Yet families will notice the marked increased tics at home. So yeah, they've suppressed all day, gone home, and absolutely boom, the Tourette's is gone wild. School college is very structured, which reinforces that make a child want to control their tics. In comparison, home life is more relaxed, therefore children feel at ease with expressing their tics without fear being judged. So yeah, you're more likely to have exertional tics at home than you are at college. I think medication, we could sort of skip these parts. The only thing I would say about medication is it can cause tiredness. So obviously, if someone is tired, there will be an effect on Tourette's if that's medication is not specific for Tourette's itself, so something they can look out for. Medication doesn't cure Tourette's. Obviously, ADHD medication can help if someone has got ADHD. Some medications help the other things that are running alongside. Melatonin has been quite beneficial for people who have sleep problems with Tourette's or sleep problems because of other things running on. So the sleep pattern cycle is good. So therefore, the more sleep the person's got, better sleep quality of sleep they've got, the less likely they are to be stressed, the less likely Tourette's is going to be problematic. There's the habit reversal, finding a different response to when they feel the predominantly urge of a tic come in. We're doing habit reversal, so we're doing something different. Exposure response prevention is a form of exposing oneself to anxiety. So when there's a predominantly urge to have a tic, they can feel it, but they're actually holding in the tic as long as they can and getting used to the fact that it's okay to be anxious and the tics do not have to be released at all. Obviously, the benefits of psychoeducation, learning and teaching as much as we can about this, it's the whole picture, the parents, the family, the school. The more we know about it, the easier it is for everybody involved. Social support, giving them, some people with Tourette's can't do things that other people can, so giving them the support they need. Relaxation therapies, they're very beneficial. And obviously a good diet. It doesn't have to be what we call a diet to lose weight. It's a diet of, good healthy diet and eating regularly. Because we find some people get hangry where they forget to eat, and obviously they do that with Tourette's, can make it a lot worse. If you're hungry, you're likely to have an increase in tics. How can Tourette's create a barrier to learning? It does not affect its IQ, but it can have an effect on a young person's ability to learn. For example, writing can be made by difficult movement tics. So what I'm going to ask you all to do now, just for 1 minute, if you have got a pen and paper, basically what I want you to do is write down from what you did this morning up till today's meeting, what you had for breakfast, example, what else you've done up until the meeting. And then I want you to carry on writing, but every time, once I clap my hands once, you've got to move your head 3 times to the right and then carry on writing. When I clap my hands twice, you've got to nod your head 3 times, but carry on writing at the same time. So that will give you a prime example of what it's like to have Tourette's. So if you're ready to go, I'll start in a minute now. And carry on writing. Okay, let's stop that there. How did everyone find that? It's quite difficult to concentrate and moving your head to the side twice, knocking your head down. That's what it's like to have Tourette's. You're still trying to carry on writing, but these are made difficult by tic movement. Difficult. I'm feeling dizzy now. There you go. Prime example. Then you can add into that, if someone's trying to write, impulsive traits can manifest as calling out in class. So you might be trying to write and all of a sudden you'll call out. Concentrating in a lesson can be really hard if you're trying to suppress the tics. That you guys didn't suppress the tics, they just happened. So you'd have predominantly urge of this horrible sensation, and then all of a sudden, bang, the tics would then come in. Co-occurring conditions may get in the way here. So prime example is someone with OCD might have to rewrite things several times, because if they don't do the writing several times, then their mum might die in a road accident, as an example. So you've got tics making them do that. The OCD is doing that. So you've got two coexisting conditions going into one, which would cause huge problems. So amount the workloads lowered down, reduced in, would make it more easier. Visual tics, so someone's eyes might be twitching to the right. You might be looking that way, yet you're still trying to focus on what's in front of you. This can cause disruption for others by ticking. So therefore, that would make the person's tick more, make them tick more, because obviously they're conscientious, they're causing disruption to other people. Homework. Reduce the amount, but not necessarily the difficulty. So small segments, like a piece of cake, but keep the same level of requirement there. It's not about the difficulty, it's about how difficult it is to concentrate for long periods of time or short periods of time, in some cases with the tics happening. So thank you for trying that experiment. It gives you a really great example of what it's like to have Tourette's and trying to write at the same time. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, sleep, good health, sleep hygiene is good for people. Medication make children tired, which can affect their work. Obviously, certain medications have a side effect. In socially isolated from peers can also have an impact on learning. So if you're feeling quite lonely, then yeah, your mood's going to drop. So therefore, your learning will be impacted on. Motor tics to the eyes, head or neck may interfere with reading, and motor tics may also affect handwriting or ability to write for long periods of time. So again, there's that ticking, which we just did, as that can also cause trouble with writing. Motor and vocal tics may make them reluctant to read aloud or answer questions, and even sometimes ask for help. So as a teacher, I suppose you could also, you wouldn't exclude them from that, but communication skills would be, how do you feel about it? It doesn't mean they don't have to, but it's what they feel comfortable with, obviously. But we mustn't shut down Tourette's. We must let them carry on, as a sense of, if it's whatever they're comfortable with. We mustn't say you mustn't call out because of your Tourette's. Physical vocal tics can be exhausting, sometimes painful for the young person experience them, leading to tiredness and lack of enthusiasm. Yeah, so if someone becomes quite recluse and tired, it's because they've had a bad Tourette's day and they're absolutely exhausted in trying to control their tics and suppressing them. So it can be really, really exhausting. How can we help? Yeah. Approach the young person, family, to find out how their Tourette's affects and what support we can offer them. So it's about inclusion, obviously, of things that can work, like we did with Archie, how we can accommodate it and how we can help them go on to be included. Try not to respond to tics unless they really require a response, as in danger, where some people who do tic actually do physically harm themselves by punching themselves in the face. So that's one of the only times you'd really want to step in if someone's ticking and they may be in a danger to themselves. Consider alternative therapies to help reduce anxiety, such as art, music, Lego therapy to aid self-expression. So they're doing something there as a bit of a distraction. Nurture programs, emotional intelligence training such as ELSA, literacy support, and educational-led, psychology-led innovation for promoting emotional well-being. So yeah, if there's a psychologist involved, nothing wrong with get them involved in the education process as well. Mindfulness in Schools project, which is obviously Saturday 7 to 11, the jigsaw for secondary. A careful seating plan, so you can work out with some people with Tourette's where the best place in the classroom is. Well, if they're at the front, they're more likely to take and look what's going on behind them. So it's finding that right place, and that again would be down to communication. Where would you think is best for you to sit in the room? Accommodate that, which then would help them less likely to tic. Yep, timeout card, leave room. Sometimes it's good to have a place where they don't have to show anything. Actually, they want to leave the room and they feel that their tics are hard to suppress. Then they can have a safe place to go and release them. Have a special job and a sensory break, somewhere they can go to feel relaxed. Sometimes they might even want to have a 30-minute rest. Traffic light system in place. Personal pass, one-page profile, so everyone knows that this is how the person is affected. Visual timetables, so they can see documented the feelings charts, how they're feeling that day, so we're aware of how that person's feeling. And obviously the brain gym can be very beneficial and helpful to them. Yep. That's what we covered earlier. Scale down the work amount, not the difficulty. So make sure the level of difficulty is still the same, but not the amounts. And check afterwards the class input, how they felt it, how they found it, how the lesson went. Never single a young person out in class because they're tics. Always approach them with sensitivity on a one-to-one basis to discuss any questions, concerns you might have. A whole school college approach to understand Tourette's can really help a person to feel accepted and understood. Awareness assemblies are an effective way to educate other people, celebrating differences, as an example. And obviously offering a child or an adolescent a scribe. If they're at high needs, they may be entitled to 25% extra time for assessments, A-levels, etc. Different quiet room, stop the clock, extra breaks, scribes, amenities, and high school consider young person's usual way of working, and obviously the UHCP. Explore possible adjustments and technical adaptation that might help ease any anxiety and support the person the challenges they face. Yeah. TS often worsens during transition to further colleges or even just a new classroom, teacher or year group. This can be especially difficult and may well require extra planning support, which we talked about earlier, extra visits, like people are now coming back New Year's, talk about what's going to happen. So they're becoming used to and getting desensitized to the situation or the change phase of education environment and staff. So they're aware 6 weeks can be a long time out of school routine to get anxious, longer this time, obviously. TA leaflets, sharing of awareness via the leaflets from Tourette's Action or the website, and educational training, which we're doing now through Tourette's Action. Tics are not intentional attempts. These are key takeaway points. They are not intentional attempts at gaining attention or to be disruptive. Tics are not the student's fault or the fault of the parents. Tics should not be taken personally, although they can be felt like they're personal. They're not, but it can affect the person on the receiving end. So it's good to support sometimes staff members if they are affected by it. It's not, we're not unhuman, are we? Young people should not be punished for their tics, never. Tics are not simple habits. They can easily be replaced or stopped. There is no one size fits all cure for tics. That's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Ash. I think that there's been lots of other questions that have popped up on the question and answer in the chat around.
Excellent. Yeah.
So I know that we just wanted to go back over, and I'm sorry, Alice, that I missed your question as before we started the activity. But I think what Alice is wanting to know is that, would there be any suggestions that we'd have around a highly anxious young person to be more successful with those social interactions, especially those with their own age, with their peer groups? The person she's thinking out is an incredibly bright young person, but does prefer the company of adults, probably because adults are more accepting. He talks obsessively and doesn't read social clues, much like young people with autism. So I think that, it's a really difficult one. And I think that it depends where, what interactions you can kind of sometimes maybe create within the college environment through the buddy system. I know that that's worked really well for us, is buddying up with other people who may have similar difficulties in the first instance, or young people that are, on other courses that, they get the bus together, or they're coming from the same area, that then can create that buddy system. And I know that we're really lucky at Weston College, where we've got a specialist autism provision for high functioning young people. So we have a social skills activity calendar that we run every evening and at the weekends, so that young people get a chance to practice those skills and start learning how to communicate more effectively. But I think that the adult company is something that we're finding a lot in the fact that actually they want the company of adults, and it's looking at those employers and working with employers so that they're ready for the next step, that maybe, you know, they'll never be successful with their peer groups in some of the activities that the young people around them are participating in, but actually looking at their employment and giving them those work experiences, is that they're then building relationships with other people, and it can be a more mature environment for a person rather than a kind of college or school environment. I don't know if you've got anything, Ashley, that you could suggest about those social interactions.
It's interesting because obviously sometimes I suppose you can also look at why they want to spend more time with adults. Is there it might not just be the autism, there can be other things running alongside which causes that anxiety to be with their own peers. So obviously if you've got Tourette's, autism, that you are going to feel totally different. So you may, it's hard, isn't it? Because you can sometimes it can be the issue can be outside of the autism. It can be an irrational fears of OCD, that I don't want to be with people my own age group. I want to be with adult, so I feel more safer, or I might want to be in that adult environment because I feel I may harm someone my own age. So many variations of what causes a person that way, isn't it? Or perhaps they just feel more confident with adults rather than their own peers. Is there a magical button that we can push that can, I suppose it's therapeutic approaches with them, you know, trying to accept them. Sometimes it's just the way that person is, isn't it? They may not want to be in their peer groups. They may want to be with older people.
I hope that gave you some suggestions there, Alice. Moving on to Sarah. Do you know what percentage of people with Tourette's are undiagnosed?
That's a good question, isn't it? I don't off the top of my head, because I think for someone with Tourette's, it would be going on for 12 months. So you'd probably end up, but I think you're looking at the, are we leaning towards how Tourette? Because some people go for diagnoses and they get missed, don't they? It's ridiculous. Sort of, how many people are undiagnosed? I don't know off the top of my head about actually looking at the research papers. At the moment, they're saying about 400,000 in the UK suffer with Tourette's.
There's another question, and it might be easier if I think it's Edie is able to come and ask the questions live, because it was based on the other questions that we had earlier around suicidal thoughts being a tic or a byproduct caused by depression.
Right.
So if it is thought that it's a tic, is there any way we can support the young person?
I think the difference with a tic is they're not going to act on it. So if it's a suicidal thought, which is a tic or part of the OCD, you can have suicidal thoughts. What if I kill myself? You're not actually going to be thinking them type of thoughts, or it's a tic thought. Ideation is totally different to not wanting to. So if the ideation's there, you'd have to support them differently in the context of supporting them within a Tourette's or OCD action. That's manifesting itself in differentials of actually someone wanted to do it.
I hope
does that help? Because there's
Edie can come on and ask it might be easier to talk rather than to do through the typing, and we can stay on for that. I'm just
yeah.
Oh, there you are. Sorry.
Sorry. No, she's just trying to unmute. Where are we?
Okay, I think what we'll do is I think that just kind of sharing a little bit more around Archie and the programme, and I think all the things that Ash has talked about were great strategies that we could implement within our college, and I think it was about making sure that we really understood what Archie was experiencing and how we could then adapt his programme around giving him extra time. And it wasn't like you said, Ashley, it's not about giving him a different level of work. It was about still giving him the same work as everybody else, but giving him extra time. So we've been able to extend his program over a 3-year period, so that to take into account that exhaustion and the times where he needs to have half days in college, those times when he's really anxious and really worried, so that he's able to not feel under so much pressure to achieve all parts of his level 3 program in the 2 years. And I think them just taking away some of that pressure, actually we found that he isn't needing to have 3 years now, but because we have the understanding and his peers have the understanding and he has additional time with his tutor, actually he's excelling, and like I said earlier, is achieving those distinctions. But unless we'd have done this training ourselves, or this awareness around Tourette's, and for us to really understand Archie as an individual and how his barriers impacted specifically on him, I'm not sure that we would have had the situation that we are in today. So we're really pleased that he's doing so well. We did put lots of information into the slides this afternoon, because we know that we can send these to you afterwards to have within your own organisations. And there were some video clips that we didn't know that we wouldn't have time to show today, but they are also in the slides so that you can have a look at those in your own time. I just wanted to, so you can see some of the I'm just hoping it won't. I just wanted to raise before we go that we do have our mental health conference next Wednesday. To all of you that are in the communities of practice as part of the SEND Centre for Excellence. I know that probably you've had emails from us over the last 2 weeks and the save the dates before half term, but we have opened up an extra 50 places this afternoon because we've been inundated with people wanting to join us next week. So the details you can see are on the screen now, but those 50 places won't be there for long. So please book up because there won't be recordings. There will be a recording available of this session this afternoon. And if you want further information, then we'd say go to the Tourette's Action, or please come back to us if you feel you could, you do have young people that are in your organisation and you'd like some support specifically around those young people, then let us know. And Ash will be more than happy, and us as a college, from our experiences, to talk through more specifics around what you may support may be able to be offered to the young people that you're working with. We hope that this afternoon you've enjoyed that last hour and still taken something away. And thank you, Ash, for sharing, your personal story as well, and raising the profile of young people with Tourette's as well. That the importance of really understanding their needs. So thank you. I know that we're happy to stay on. I know that you were trying to unmute yourself about that question. So we'll just answer those questions. But other than that, just to say thank you, and hopefully we'll see some of you at the conference next week. Yes, I think we've got a couple of things. Let me see if I can. I've got a hand.
Yeah. Can you? Yeah.
Caroline, can you? Vanessa, you've raised your hand as well, so you have another question. Sorry if I've missed that. I'm really sorry. Sorry, there was a question around the colleagues. Can colleagues join the conference too? Yes, you can send this conference link, or you can find it on the Weston College website, or also on the ETF website. We are happy for you to forward it to people that are in your organisation that may not be in the communities of practice, but we're just saying to you, can you be mindful that we've only got another 50 places? So we would be hopeful that not all organisations would try and take huge numbers, but for 2 or 3 people within your organisation, then we're more than happy as long as those spaces are still available. I know that some people have asked if they could be in touch with Ash outside of this. So if you let us know, if you email us at the SEND Centre for Excellence, I'm sure that we can put you in touch with Ash to have that conversation outside. That's not a problem.
Absolutely.
That's more fee. No, we're joking. Ash does have as a full-time job, don't you, as a barber on the other? So
Yeah, I do barbering. I do doing a lot of work with perinatal mental health in fathers at the moment. Also, I'm on a government body for perinatal, the stuff we do maternal mental health in fathers. Yeah, I do a lot of work, but my main job is I am a barber, and when I'm cutting hair, I'm not ticking.